Clean up or get out. Black trash. The voice cracked through the sterile hospital corridor like the snap of a whip. Sharp, slicing, unforgiving. A white doctor stood with her arm outstretched, finger leveled mercilessly at a black janitor crouched low, mop glistening in her weathered hands. The hallway fell into suffocating stillness. No one spoke. No one turned to meet her eyes. Heads lowered, feet shuffled on polished tiles, but not all eyes turned away. Just beyond that small, cruel scene, someone sat quietly, unblinking. Ibrahim Traoré, the sitting president of Burkina Faso, watched in absolute silence. A man forged in orphanhood, carved by struggle, and raised by the very woman now bent under public disgrace. This woman had wiped tears from his fevered cheeks when the world had abandoned him. She had wrapped him in scraps of cloth and dreams, whispering that one day he might build what others tried to bury. Moments later, the entire Yalgado National Hospital would bow, heads lowered in apology, to the woman they had tried to erase. This is a true account of racism, the degradation of labor, and the hushed reckoning that forced an entire system to choke on its arrogance. For sometimes the one humiliated today is the soul who once nursed a nation's leader into tomorrow. Yalgado National Hospital. A long corridor stretched endlessly, bathed in the muted glow of flickering fluorescent lights. The air was dense with the sterile tang of disinfectant. Rain's first thin fingers clung to dusty window panes, shadows pressing against sealed glass. At the farthest end of the hallway, a woman in her early 60s knelt. Her janitor's uniform was faded from years of bleach and toil. Her hands were rough from chemicals and decades of scrubbing. Slowly, deliberately, she wiped the residual streaks left by the graveyard shift. From the opposite side, a broad-shouldered white woman marched briskly. Her white coat gleamed pristine, lips painted a sharp, unyielding scarlet. She glanced at the caution sign, then at the floor, still moist, and with a calculated flick, dragged her coat's hem through a puddle. Her foot lashed outward, kicking the mop aside like refuse. Her voice, shrill and cutting, rang out. "What kind of filth are you dragging through here? You think this is some market street in your village? Go mop a bus station if that's what you're good for." The older woman bowed her head, her voice dissolving into a fragile whisper. "I'm sorry, doctor." Passers-by hurried along, avoiding the unfolding spectacle. A handful of young nurses stifled giggles. No one intervened. Silently, the woman stooped, retrieved the toppled sign, and returned to her silent work. On a battered bench nearby, a man sat still, dark-skinned, wearing a worn button-up shirt. He said nothing, but his eyes, deep and unwavering, missed nothing. A security guard brushed past and grumbled, "Hey, no sleeping here. If you're homeless, take it outside." The man only inclined his head. Slow, respectful. None recognized him. No one realized that the woman being berated was the foster mother of an orphan boy. Nor did they fathom that the man they mistook for a vagrant was the president of their republic. Ibrahim Traoré did not wear his uniform that day. There were no bodyguards, no presidential seal stitched to his chest, no motorcade thundering before him. Only a simple, traditional shirt, loose trousers, and worn leather sandals. He had come unannounced, to witness with his own eyes what power often blinds people to see. He drifted into the impatient ward, the place with the thickest cloud of complaints and whispered grievances. A young white nurse, no more than 30, blocked his path. Her uniform was crisp, her blonde hair wound tightly into a severe bun. Arms stiff, her eyes narrowed. "This area is restricted," she snapped. "If you don't have insurance or a referral, return to the waiting zone. That's where your kind belong." Her gaze dragged over his modest clothes with visible distaste. "Whose family are you? Do you even have paperwork?" Ibrahim said nothing. Instead, he lowered his head gently and smiled. Not the brittle smile of a man wounded, but one carved from years of quiet endurance. The kind of smile worn by those who have swallowed this insult 1,000 times over. Yet still, each time, it burns anew. In his mind echoed the voice of Aminata, the woman from his past. There are places, child, where your skin arrives long before your name ever does. He turned away without a word, his footsteps echoing deeper into the hospital. He didn't need to consult a physician. He had already diagnosed the rot eating at this institution, the disease of discrimination. The corridor stretched cold and hollow. He rounded a corner, his eyes skimming across cracked walls and peeling paint. Suddenly his foot slipped. The damp floor betrayed him. His body lurched. He staggered toward the unforgiving stone tiles. But before he fell, a steadying hand caught him, a hand trembling but firm, worn yet familiar. It was her, the older woman in the faded janitor uniform. Her scarf was loosely wrapped around silvered hair. A damp mop quivered in her other hand. "I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean... I just finished cleaning. I didn't realize..." Her words tumbled, panicked, her gaze locked downward. But Ibrahim did not glance at the wet floor. He stared at her face and froze, utterly, completely still. The fine lines etched by time, that voice, the gentle weight of her hand on his shoulder, all of it dragged him backwards through the corridors of memory, to nights fevered with sickness, to thin bowls of porridge ladled with care, to lullabies hummed in the darkness to calm his restless orphan soul. His voice cracked, low and raw. "What is your name?" She hesitated, lifting her gaze, eyes weary, yet endlessly gentle. "Aminata, sir." Her name fell into the air like thunder rolling through clear skies. His chest constricted, his throat closed tight. This was her, the woman who swaddled him in rags, who sheltered him beneath leaking roofs, who fed him when the world turned its back. He stumbled backwards, his breath catching. His hand trembled ever so slightly. "Aminata, is it really you?" Her lips parted, her breath shuddered. She peered closer, and then whispered as though summoning an old dream. "Ibrahima." In that instant, the layers of power and politics melted away. No president stood before her now. Only a boy who once called her Mama Nina, and the woman who shielded him from beatings, from starvation, from loneliness itself. Hospital cafeteria. That afternoon, harsh light spilled over trays of cold rice. Weary staff stood in long, silent queues. Ibrahim, still just a man in humble garb, walked softly beside Aminata. "They won't let me eat when the doctors do," she murmured, her voice brittle with resignation. "If I go earlier, they scold me for stealing their portions." He gazed at her steadily. His face was calm, but deep inside an unspoken tempest gathered. "From today onward, Mama," he said quietly, "you eat standing beside me." From the back, a young medical student, live streaming the entire meeting, whispered, "This isn't a meeting anymore. This is a public trial." Within 24 hours of Ibrahim's speech, the Ministry of Health launched an emergency full-scale investigation into Yalgado Hospital. Public fury erupted. The two doctors from the footage were suspended indefinitely. The head nurse, who had silently witnessed the abuse, issued a public apology to the entire Black community. Her letter read, "I didn't speak slurs, but I stayed silent when I should have spoken. And that silence is the deepest regret of my life." Meanwhile, something unprecedented stirred across Burkina Faso. In Ouagadougou's Citizen Square, Aminata, the elderly janitor with calloused hands, stepped onto a stage encircled by cameras and thousands of citizens. Wearing a simple, traditional indigo dress, she choked back tears as President Traoré draped over her shoulders a medallion and announced her new title, Guardian of Dignity of the National Hospital. Addressing the crowd, Ibrahim's voice broke with emotion. We can rebuild a hospital, but we cannot heal its soul unless we honor those who kept it clean, not just with their hands, but with their character. In the front row, Fatou, a retired nurse and Aminata's old colleague, buried her face in her palms and sobbed. I saw her splashed, insulted, ignored, and I laughed it off because I was afraid of suffering the same. Her voice cracked. Today, I just want to say, I'm sorry. I was the second black woman who didn't defend her. The hashtags number respect for Aminata and number no more silence ignited across African social media. Students pinned Aminata's photo in classrooms. Young doctors scrawled her name on their lab coats, a quiet emblem of resistance. A medical university in Burkina Faso swiftly announced that the story of Aminata and Ibrahim would become part of the national curriculum in a course titled Ethics in Medical Practice. Days later, at the presidential palace, no parades, no fanfare, Aminata ascended the stage. She wore a deep indigo bubu, a simple shawl resting over her shoulders. As she walked past rows of senior officials, doctors, and citizens, the entire room rose to its feet in silent tribute. Ibrahim's voice faltered as he gripped the microphone. I lost my mother when I was 5, he confessed, and when I had no one, it was Aminata who wiped my tears. Today, before this entire nation, it is our turn to wipe hers. He handed her 2 gifts. First, an honorary retirement certificate signed personally by the government. Second, an official property deed to a fully furnished home in Ouagadougou, close to a school and near the hospital she had loyally served for almost 30 years. Then came the final announcement, the Aminata Scholarship, designed to uplift children and students, like Ibrahim once was, who grew up with nothing but potential. No one is born nameless, Ibrahim declared. Society simply forgets to say their name. When Aminata finally took the microphone, her frail hands trembled. I have no grand word, she murmured, only a heart. And today, I wish for one thing alone, to hear it just once more, that I am called Mother. After the ceremony, Aminata returned to her quiet village of Kuogo. Beneath the sprawling baobab tree, neighbors laid out a simple feast, red rice, bissap tea, and grilled chicken. No media, no applause, just warm smiles and stories drifting like evening winds. A 9-year-old girl named Adama tugged at Aminata's hand. Auntie, why didn't you tell me you raised the president? Aminata smiled, her voice dropping to a secretive hush. Because I didn't do it for people to know. I did it because a child needed love. Love doesn't need proof, and not everything needs to be shown off. In a quiet corner, someone snapped a photo of the old woman, silver-haired and slight, cradling a child against her chest. That image would later grace the cover of a new school textbook in Burkina Faso, in a chapter titled, The Silent Women Who Lifted a Nation with Their Bare Hands. Maybe you've just heard a story, but maybe right now it's happening around you. An old woman quietly mopping a hallway, a slender guard unlocking your school gate at dawn, a sweeper brushing yesterday's dust from your street. Have you ever asked their name? Have you paused and are even for 3 seconds to smile? We live in a world obsessed with success, but it is the unseen hands that keep it clean, safe, and human. If someone ever cared for you, taught you, helped you, and you've never thanked them, maybe today is the perfect day, because in the end, it's not power, it's gratitude that changes everything.